I am here and I'm ready. I just
if-
got here, but I'm
If you
here.
could, and if everybody could please mute if you're not speaking, because I'm hearing some feedback and some echoing going on. So if you're not speaking, please mute your phones or your computers.
Okay. Are we ready to get going, Mike, then?
I believe we are, if you're ready.
Okay. Very good. Now let's call the meeting to order. We need to do a roll call. Letitia, you want to do that?
Yes. Okay. Al Wyruth,
Here.
thank you. Bruce Burke,
Here.
thank you. Cindy Ayala,
Here.
thank you. Dale Calvert,
Here.
thank you. Leanne Hernandez. Don't see her. Elizabeth Soltero,
Here.
thank you. Ian Johnson,
Here.
thank you. Jesse Lugo,
Here.
thank you. Nathan Kapler. Don't see him. And Ned Beeman,
Here.
thank you. We do have quorum. You're muted. You're muted.
I'll wake up. In the packet, there is a copy of the meeting minutes. Is there any corrections or adjustments in the minutes? And could we get an motion to approve the minutes from the January 10th meeting?
This is Al. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, is that Ned?
I think it was Al.
I'll
Al,
second
okay.
it.
Okay, it's Al. Thanks. Okay. We got a second?
Yes, I'll
Okay.
second it.
Very good. Motion just made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, I'll have to go ahead and do a roll call.
No, that's right. I'm sorry. I forget that, Letitia. Sorry. Yes, we have to do a roll call on the minutes. So Letitia will do a roll call.
Okay. Al Wyruth,
Aye.
thank you. Bruce Burke,
Yes.
thank you. Cindy Ayala,
Yes.
thank you. Dale Calvert,
Yes.
thank you. Liz Soltero,
Yes.
thank you. Ian Johnson,
Yes.
thank you. Jesse Lugo,
Yes.
thank you. And Ned Beeman,
Yes.
thank you. We do have an approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, call to the audience. First, Mike, do you have some things you want to say?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for participating in tonight's meeting. Just some housekeeping items that I want to go over to let you know that the meeting is being recorded. So it's subject to the Freedom of Information Act and any public records request. So I want to get that out there first. I'd already mentioned, please stay muted unless you're speaking. And then when you're speaking, unmute. And then when you're done speaking, go ahead and mute. You can post your comments or questions in the chat box, and it should be at the upper right of your computer monitor or your laptop screen. There is a sign-in sheet that Christina posted in the chat. So if you could please go ahead and sign in. And the last thing is we do have a call to the audience, which is the next item. So if there's any members of the public that would like to participate and speak during call to the audience, remember to unmute, state your name, and when you're done, go ahead and remute. Okay, so you want to go to call the audience now, Dale? You're muted.
We do want to say though, before, when we go to call to the audience, we do want to tell everybody that you're limited to 3 minutes on your comments, so that everybody gets a chance to comment. And with that, do we have anybody who wishes to comment? Hearing nothing. Letitia, did you have anybody notify you?
I believe, well, honestly, they didn't request, but they requested the information for the meeting. I don't know,
Okay.
Shannon, did you want to speak?
Am I hearing somebody who wants to speak?
No, she just
No.
sent a
Okay.
message. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Having heard nobody wishing to speak and having not received any specific requests, we'll move on to item 4, 6th Street right sizing presentation. Ryan Fagan is here to discuss that. And so, Ryan, are you ready?
I am. Yes. Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Okay, the floor is all yours.
All right. I'm just going to share my screen here and put things back where they are supposed to be. Okay. All right. Thanks for having me. So my name is Ryan Fagan. I am a planning project manager with the Department of Transportation and Mobility. I'm going to talk about some things that we're looking at doing on 5th and 6th Street. You're probably aware of the Prop 101 project on 5th Street from Country Club to Wilmot. That'll replace the pavement and put in new curb ramps. So there's another project on 5th and 6th Street from Campbell to Alvernon that will provide complete sidewalks, curb ramps, street lighting, enhanced pedestrian crossings, and new landscaping. And you can see that there's, let me get my little pointer up. You can see that there's an overlap here between Country Club and Alvernon. So what we're looking at doing is actually combining these two projects into one design and construction package. There's also actually a Tucson water project. They'll be replacing a line underneath 5th Street as well when all this happens. So basically, since we're doing all this repaving and we have this this walkability project happening, we're taking this opportunity to look at potentially changing the striping on the roadway to potentially, address safety issues and better meet community needs. So even though we're repaving just east of Country Club, pretty much this whole 5-mile stretch from Campbell to Wilmot is, it's contextually very similar. So we're looking at, whatever we do, whether we put back the same striping or we change it, of having, more or less the same striping along the whole corridor. So we're considering 2 basic design options. This is option A, and this is essentially the same as what we have today. So it's 4 lanes, 2 vehicle lanes in each direction, and no center turn lane, and no bike lanes. And then option B is a 3-lane option, and that would reconfigure the roadway primarily with the goal of improving safety. So it would be, it would involve going from 2 through lanes in each direction that we currently have to 1 through lane in each direction. And that would give us room to add a center turn lane and bike lanes. And along most of the corridor, we would have room for the bike lanes to be buffered and have more room than a typical bike lane does. So the biggest reason really, as I mentioned, is safety that we'd be doing this. There have been a lot of studies of similar streets, 4-lane roads, very similar to 5th and 6th, that have been converted to 3-lane roads like this. And they've found a significant reduction in crashes, anywhere from 19% to 47%. And actually here in Tucson, we did something similar on 36th Street. That was a 4-lane road that was restriped to 3 lanes several years back. and the number of crashes fell by 70%. And this is mostly due to the reduction of a few types of crashes. We expect to see fewer rear end crashes, a reduction in excessive speeding because cars can't weave in and out of traffic and pass the same way as they can now. And also a reduction in sideswipe crashes for the same reason. We also see left turns being improved due to better visibility and only having to cross one lane of traffic. And then for people who are walking, it reduces what's called the multiple threat crash type. And that's really when you have a pedestrian who's waiting to cross, whether it's at a marked crosswalk, an unmarked crosswalk, at a hawk. And what happens is, this person's waiting. A car comes to a stop in the near lane to allow them to go. And then that car ends up actually blocking the view between the pedestrian and another oncoming car so that neither one can see each other. So obviously that can have not so good consequences. So by going to a 3-lane configuration, this issue would be pretty much eliminated. And then just for fun, I was out taking pictures on 5th and 6th Street a while back, and just happened without even trying. When I zoomed in on some of the photos, I found a lot of this example of cars waiting to turn left and blocking traffic. As if you've driven down 5th Street very much, you're probably familiar with this issue. And whichever side of the issue you're on, whether you're stopped to make a left turn and stopped in the middle of the road in a through lane, or whether you're actually just trying to go through and somebody comes to a stop in front of you, it's not super fun, and it's more than a minor annoyance because among other things, it reduces the capacity of the road at the times when it's most needed. When you have the most traffic on the road, that's when more cars are waiting to turn. That's when you have more traffic that's blocking that turn. So at peak times, we actually see that it reduces capacity more than at other times, and it also just creates unpredictability in driver behavior, which is not ideal. So, one of the biggest benefits is that it gets rid of this left turn issue, and it gives drivers just a safe place to wait to turn. It improves visibility significantly. As you can see here, I've encountered this personally on Country Club, which I live near, but where you stop to turn, somebody else is also stopped to turn in the opposite direction at the same intersection, and you both end up sort of blocking the view of the other person of the far lane. So when left turners are able to use the center lane, visibility is improved, they have a clear view, and they also only have one lane to cross when they make the turn. And we just expect smoother traffic flow because you have less excessive speeding due to the reasons I mentioned earlier, and fewer vehicles stopped waiting to turn. And then another improvement that we would expect is improved emergency response. And this is actually something that the Federal Highway Administration cites as a benefit of road diets. And that's because it's easier for, generally speaking, it's easier for emergency vehicles to navigate the center lane if they're trying to speed to an emergency, rather than trying to sort of get around vehicles that are in multiple lanes that are trying to get over without a center lane there. So operationally, it's a benefit for a number of reasons, but emergency response is also one of them. Another benefit is improvement in walking and biking conditions. As I mentioned, it provides room for bike lanes and along most of the corridor, mainly east of about Palo Verde. It would be wide enough to provide a buffered bike lane, which you can see an example of that here. It also improves pedestrian crossings, as I mentioned earlier, but it also provides space for refuge islands. This is an example here on 36th Street. As I mentioned, where we had that road diet several years back, and that road diet made room for this crossing island. So that allows pedestrians to cross the street in 2 stages rather than waiting for both directions of travel to be clear. And it also makes for a more comfortable experience for everybody because you don't have bikes and vehicles trying to share the lane, and it moves traffic further away from the sidewalk and from adjacent properties. So there is a downside to this, as you probably guessed, and that's an increase in travel times. So we have worked with our traffic engineering division and an engineering consultant that we work with, SOMAS. And based on traffic modeling and analysis that's been done, we would expect travel time increase along 5th and 6th Street to increase by an average of about 6% in the morning peak time and 8% in the afternoon peak. So that would be the peak hour, rush hour in both morning and afternoon. But I do want to mention this analysis is a few years old, and it uses older traffic count data, and a long-term trend that we've been seeing is a general decline in traffic volumes along 5th and 6th. About 20 years ago, they averaged about 20,000 vehicles per day. Now it's more like 15,000. So that puts the road well within the guidelines set by the Federal Highway Administration for a reconfiguration that we're looking at. So you know, it should provide a smooth and predictable ride. It shouldn't create you know, any really significant congestion, although travel times at the peak hour would increase. And then just to give you an idea of sort of what we're doing right now, I've been giving presentations to all the neighborhood associations along the corridor. We're hopefully getting close to the end of that. We have a few more that are happening in March, but presented to a lot of them. The result, you know, the response overall has been pretty positive as far as the support for the reconfiguration. But we want to hear from everybody along these corridors first, and then we'll be broadening it to businesses. We're going to be doing outreach to businesses in a few weeks, and then the general public will come after that. And then a little bit later, we'll be doing some planning and public outreach on the pedestrian improvements that I mentioned that would be going on from Campbell to Alvernon. And then we're hoping, you know, we're at the very earliest, we would expect construction could start in 2023. That may happen later, just depending on a number of factors, including staffing. And then there is a project website. So if you have any more questions, or I mean, I'm happy to answer questions now, but if you want to learn more, there's a lot of information there, a lot about road diets in general, and a lot of resources from Federal Highway Administration and others about the pros and cons of them. So we also have a survey, but right now we, as I mentioned, we are doing outreach just to neighborhood associations. So we are hoping to sort of keep that just to the neighborhood associations for now, but in a few months we expect to broaden that, and you know, we can let you all know when that happens, so you can make your voice heard. But that's all I got for the presentation. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Yes, Ryan, Cynthia has had her hand up, so let's give
Okay.
Cynthia a chance first.
Ryan. Okay, you keep bringing up, and you've shown several times, several pictures of 36th. I can tell you for a fact, you know that little whatever crosswalk? I think that's what it's called, at Plummer and 36th. That item has been hit so many times and ran over so many times. Not only that, but you want to hear the voices. Well, I can tell you right now, back when all this was started, Darrell Code didn't really care about the voices, and this is what happened. 36th Street has become a very traveled street because of all the construction that's around it. And not only that, but because of this little diet that we're all on with these streets, Pueblo Gardens has become a main thoroughfare. Okay, so this is the opinion, and I'm also the president of Pueblo Gardens, and everybody has done nothing but complain about it since it was done, since it was installed, and our voices didn't mean squat. So as far as your survey and as far as all this other stuff, you'll probably, maybe it works in some areas, but the areas that you've shown, we've increased our traffic going right through our neighborhood on 36th Street from Campbell to Silver Lake. And it's getting worse due to the fact of all the construction that's all around us. So if you've taken over Darrell's job, congratulations. Not. And that's just my opinion, but you know, that's just my opinion.
If I understand, so are you saying that there's more cut-through traffic through the neighborhood? Is it, or that there's more traffic on 36th Street or both?
No, it's both. It's gotten worse through the neighborhoods, and we're not just talking trucks and cars and little mopeds. We're talking semis. We're talking oil tankers. We're talking, the ones that aren't even supposed to go over the Cherry Bell Bridge, but they're coming through our neighborhood because they don't want to have to take the detours that's been issued to them. We've got that. It's gotten worse ever since it's been put in, and over the past year, it's gotten even worse. And not only that, they're coming through the neighborhood, not just on Campbell, but they're now coming into the major arteries of the neighborhoods. There's 33rd, there's Plummer, there's Minner, there's Treat, there's Forges. They're hitting all of them, and they don't seem to have any direction. They just come on through, and nobody's there to stop them.
Well, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I unfortunately, I can't speak to, the cause of those issues. I would suspect that it's more than the changes that were made to 36th Street that are leading to that. But I don't know if there's anybody else from our department who might have some insight on that. But
well, as I said, it has occurred ever since the change was made. The traffic increased. And now with all the extra construction that's going on around, in fact, we've got construction right now on Cherry Bell between Silver Lake and 22nd Street that has causing them to go even further into it. So yeah, it's not, we've been hoping that it would get changed, but it's not going to, which there's, I guess, like you just gave me the same answer everybody else did. There's nothing you can do about it.
If I can step in, so Ryan, I was part of, in the director's office during 36th, and I talked a lot with Cindy, with Daryl Cole and I know that I think 36 was one of the first right sizings that we did. And it in fact has been problematic for the neighborhood in Pueblo Gardens. And so I think that we've seen that same thing on 12th. As well. There's a lot more cut through traffic and some congestion. So, and I don't know, I think it's hard to compare 5th, 6th to 36th when it comes to ADT, but we'll take a look at that, Cynthia. And, but I know we've heard your frustration since the day that we did that right sizing, Cynthia. So, but this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get feedback from the public. We have a survey, so participate in the survey. So
nope, you don't want to hear what I have to say in the survey. You definitely don't want to hear it, Mike. No.
We do absolutely, Cindy, want to hear, and we can look back at 36 and see what else can be done over there. So. Since it's continuing and you've got a lot of cut through, let's see what we can look at there. There may be other solutions for you.
Okay,
I appreciate you doing whatever you can do, because this it's gotten out of hand, and I'm just worried that my neighbors are going to their kids are going to get squished. That somebody hits. I mean, they keep hitting that one little. I'm not sure what you even call it, but it's been hit so many times. And it was becoming a weekly thing when Richard Bell when he wasn't retired. But I would call him at least once a week. Hey, guess what? You got to put a new sign up. And it's like, okay, I'm done. Okay, moving on.
Okay, yes, let's move on. I've got Ned and Ian both have questions. Brian.
I guess I'll go first. Well, I was going to say I was driving down. I actually went 6th all the way from Wilmot to Campbell today, and I swear I was almost rear-ended at least twice because of that turning issue, and that was at 3:30. So I mean, I look forward to the change. I'll feel a lot safer on that street. I did, just to be clear, Ryan, you said that there was a 70% reduction in crashes on 36th.
Yes, so that analysis was done quite a while ago. So I don't have the details on that.
But that is like the normal. I mean, there's almost always a significant reduction in crashes for these kinds of treatments.
when they're within the, you know, the range that's, you know, generally when they're under about 20,000 vehicles per day, that's generally what we expect.
Okay, and then I just had one really specific question. You said that the bike lanes would likely be buffered. I think it was east of Palo Verde. What I know that stretch between Campbell and Country Club is just incredibly narrow. What does it look like there? Would the cross section be like 11-foot travel lanes and what, like 3-foot bike lanes?
So yeah, so that section, it's between approximately Campbell and Treat, where it's actually less than 40 feet wide, and 40 is kind of the minimum that we would normally put have a 3-lane road with bike lanes. A Tucson Boulevard in that vicinity is an example of that, where it's 40 feet wide. You've got 10-foot travel lanes and 5-foot bike lanes. So unfortunately, we're just under that threshold. So we with the current roadway width, we may not be able to do bike lanes. One thing we are exploring as part of the pedestrian safety and walkability project would be actually to see about moving that curb back a few feet in that area and widening the road slightly in order to make room for bike lanes. That's something that's sort of like a nice to have. If we can afford to do that on top of other things that we're to deliver as part of the pedestrian safety and walkability project, that's something that we'll look at, but it's not, it you know, it doesn't sort of rise to the level of you know, an essential item in that project.
Of course. Okay, thank you.
Okay, can everybody make sure they're muted? We're getting a lot of feedback. And Ned, you had a question.
Yeah, when you're talking about traffic counts, the last 2 years, aren't traffic counts going to be screwed up due to COVID?
Quite possibly, yes. I don't know that there have been any direct count. You know, so these counts are done on sort of a rolling basis every 3 years. Pima Association of Governments does them, and so they, you know, they do counts around the community, and they hit every street every 3 years. So you know, we don't have. I don't know that we have direct counts along the entire corridor in the last year or two, but you know, it's more that the overall trend is down. There also, you know, there's all kinds of factors. You know, the Broadway construction may be increasing traffic on 5th, 6th right now as well. So it's really hard to judge based on what traffic is, you know, this year or last year. But the overall trend has been down, and we expect that.
Because you mentioned that the count was done in 2020 in your presentation.
I don't know that I mentioned that specifically, that there was a count done in 2020, but let me go to my, let's see. Okay, yeah, so yeah, thank you. So yeah, so it looks like there was a count done on Campbell to Country Club in 2020, and there was one done Country Club to Alvernon last year.
Yeah.
So you know, those don't look to be outliers. So you know, it's entirely possible that they were pushed down due to COVID, but maybe pushed up due to Broadway. It's hard to say.
Okay.
Okay, did we have any other questions? And I have a quick question, Ryan, just as a matter of clarification. Was there not a study done to do that came back and said it was not appropriate to do a road diet west of Campbell, just for everybody's background?
So yeah, so there was a study that was done. I think it was from Euclid to Country Club several years back. You know, offhand, I don't recall if that study recommended not doing the road diet west of Campbell, but the traffic volumes are significantly higher west of Campbell, so that would be, it would be a taller order to consider that west of Campbell. And you know, right now it's kind of moot because there's no funding for a project west of Campbell one way or another. So you know, we're looking at the area from Campbell to Wilmot because you know we have projects in those areas that you know we can look at making this change happen if that's something that makes sense and that the community wants.
Okay. Do we have any other questions before we move forward?
Mr. Chairman, this is Al.
Yes, Al.
Like Ryan, you showed in one of your early pictures two stripes down next to the bike lane. Can you explain the two stripes? I know that I've got two stripes on a good portion of Rita Road, and it's caused a lot of confusion out here. And, you know, primarily because the county did it as part of the loop. Is this part of the loop, or what is the reason for the two stripes? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. No, it's not part of the loop. You know, I suspect that they made that change along Rita Road to widen the bike lane a little bit. I think total it's about 6 feet wide. It's not a very wide buffer. Whereas we'd be looking at potentially being able to do maybe 8 or 9 feet for the entire bike lane and buffer area. What kind of confusion have you seen? I mean, I guess I'm interested in what the issues you've been seeing are.
Well, a lot of people were asking why we had one lane, and then all of a sudden, the next one day, here's somebody painting another lane, and just trying to figure out what was going on. And you know, they don't understand why the two are only like a foot separated. If you're gonna have a bike lane, then it ought to be just probably easier to have it marked one stripe instead of like in the rest of the city. But when you have two going down, it's all of a sudden people are wondering what's going, you know, there's some confusion of the normal motorists.
Yeah, no, and I can understand that. You know, along Rita Road, I can't speak to the thinking behind that, but I do know that it's fairly narrow there. For buffered bike lanes, one of the main reasons that a buffer line is painted, and you can also see these little hatch lines as well. And those, that's because when you get more than about 6 feet, when you get to 7 or more feet for the total width of the bike lane, you find that people start trying to drive in it. So it's not recommended to go 7 feet or more for the bike lane area. And so whenever you have a bike lane, you know, area that is 7 feet or greater, that it should usually be buffered.
Well, do you have is there a lot of a survey or something of how many bicyclists use 5th and 6th Street on a daily basis? Is that something you have available, or PAG or whatever?
You know, PAG's intersection counts, I think, should capture bicycles. Although those are not, I don't believe those are 24-hour counts, so it doesn't provide a full picture around the clock. But you know, the thing here is that the bike lanes are more of sort of an amenity that we can provide by making this change. That it's sort of a secondary to the safety benefit that we expect to realize. And given that we have enough space to add the bike lanes, you know, we figure it makes sense to do that. And there aren't a lot of people. I'll just say there's not a ton of people who are using 5th, 6th right now, and it's really because it's not a pleasant experience to ride on. And so, you know, we would expect that if we are able to make it into a better bike facility, that more people will use it.
Okay, Ryan,
Thank you.
Ryan, Jesse, Lugo, or did you have another question, Al? Okay,
Thanks very much.
what? Go ahead. Okay, Jesse Lugo has a question, Ryan, and then we need to bring this to a conclusion and move on.
Yeah, Ryan, Jesse Lugo, I'd like to see a bike traffic count when there's going to be some bike lanes installed. Because to me, I'd rather see 4 lanes to move traffic versus making additional costs of putting bike lanes. But the analysis of bike actually count would actually could give us a good direction whether or not to put these bike lanes on some of these streets.
Thanks for your comment. Yeah, I mean, I just to speak to that a little bit, you know, the main reason for this would not be to add bike lanes. It would be to improve safety through adding that center turn lane and, you know, preventing some of the, you know, reducing some of the crashes that I mentioned. So, you know, with that space, you know, it makes the most sense to put in bike lanes rather than just have, you know, a wide vehicle lane. So that's the thinking behind it. So, you know, I appreciate the questions about the you know, bike ridership and what, you know, what it is now and what it's expected to be. But it's kind of secondary to the main goal, which is improving safety for all users.
Well, I disagree on the bike lanes causing more safety. Probably get people off their damn cell phones and paying attention to what they're doing. It might reduce traffic accidents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we need to bring this item to a conclusion and move on to item 5 on the agenda. Do you have anything else to say, Ryan?
No, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll drop my contact information and the project website in the chat so you can access it.
Thank you. Okay, Robin, are you ready to go with the RTA next update?
Sure. I don't have a lot to say about RTA Next. I think that perhaps the folks in here are interested to have already listened to the RTA board meeting that happened on Thursday, January 27th. But what they did that day is they voted to increase the city's representation on the RTA Citizen Advisory Committee, and that's the group that's creating RTA Next, and adding representation on the RTA Technical Management Committee, as well as the Citizens Accountability for Regional Transportation Committee, and that's the one that has oversight over the RTA. Now, the RTA board, they did not vote for weighted voting on the board, but the city received enough forward motion here that we felt like we could move forward with RTA in coordination for RTA Next. So if you're interested in hearing more of what the mayor and council had in commentary on that, there was a meeting on February 1st, and the recording is there. And I believe the recording of the RTA board meeting is also online. So if you would like a lot of details, those recordings are available if you want to listen, and I'm here to answer any questions I can.
I'll throw out a couple things, Robin, that probably ought to be additionally covered. One is, wasn't there part of the motion they made laying out a format, a way to deal with the shortfall in the city funding on several of the projects that are at the end of the current RTA plan? And secondly, wasn't there also added to the motion an amendment that said that they would continue to look at the weighted voting issue with using the Maricopa, the Maricopa Association of Governments plan for weighted voting, potentially with maybe some modifications in Pima County. And those two things I thought ought to be covered. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, the only thing that I would add to that is, as far as having a plan to complete the projects, I would say it's not just the City of Tucson projects. There are several in other communities as well. And so the focus needs to be, what exactly are we going to do to complete the plan that is in force right now with RTA. So yes, that was part of the motion. The other piece of it, as far as continuing to explore weighted voting, I don't know that they narrowed it to just Maricopa Association of Governments style, but I think that the agreement was made that they would continue to discuss it as to whether or not it was something that we wanted to do here in Pima County.
Do we have other questions? Okay, I'm not hearing any other questions, and I'm probably the one who'd have the most questions as a member of the Citizens Committee, but I have pretty well answered my questions. So if there's no other questions on that, I think we need to move forward to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Prop 101 additional funding capacity. And Jeffrey Whiting and Robin are supposed to talk about that. So the floor is yours.
I'll let Jeff
Thank you.
start.
Outstanding. Thank you. Yes, so as we've been discussing over the course of the last few meetings, we are at this point anticipating more revenues than what we had originally counted on. We are originally, when we set the program up, we had anticipated about $100 million worth of revenues would be collected over the 5 years. At this point, we will continue to collect revenues through June 30th. That's when the program is currently scheduled to sunset. And we are anticipating that we could wind up with as many as $24 million more in revenue than what we had originally anticipated. So that warrants a conversation. What should we do with those additional revenues? And it would fall to this body to potentially come up with recommendations that we would then take back to mayor and council. Part of what we need to consider in looking at those recommendations is we have, when the original ballot language was set up, for every dollar that the program brought in, 60 cents of each dollar was designated to go to arterials, and 40 cents is designated to go to local streets. That dynamic would need to be in play and considered as part of the recommendation that would move forward. So that's a consideration I would ask you guys to keep in mind. Robin, would you like to add anything to that?
So on those points, no. But if anybody has any question about what Jeffrey just covered, feel free to ask them now or wait until I've mentioned a few things. Not seeing any hands. So you guys all got a map, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I think you got 2 maps. One was for arterials or major streets, and another one was for the local streets. And that followed the 60-40 split that Jeff just talked about, which was ballot language. So we had to maintain that split. I think that was one of the questions we talked about last time we had this meeting. And so what DTM staff used was the same criteria for the local streets that this body had voted on before, which was ward equality, worst first, and bike boulevards. The arterial and collector and local polygon recommendations are highlighted on the maps, which I think you all got.
Robin,
Yes.
can I just step in and the BOC did not receive the maps, so they did not get
Let me
them.
share.
We were going to share those tonight.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let me show you. Let me see. Well, first let me share. Sorry about that. My mistake.
I should have told you that. My bad.
No, sorry about that. For some reason, I think I knew that we had sent it out to mayor and council, and I thought we had sent it out to this group too. So I'm gonna make this. Can you guys see that now? Can everyone see that?
Is it possible, this is Liz, is it possible to also email that to us so we can look on our device as well and kind of zoom in and zoom out?
Sure. Mike, do you have that available? It would be hard for me to email them at this moment in time.
Leticia do that, but I need to get that document to Leticia for her to send out. So
Okay. So yes, we can here momentarily, but these are the major streets and routes. So these are the major streets. I was trying to make it small enough so that we could see the whole city at once, but instead I'm gonna kind of focus in here on, try to get this out of the way, on the red lines, which are the ones that we selected to add. You can see there's Flowing Wells and Glen. There's Maine, a little stretch of Maine. There's 18th Cherrybelle here, and a little bit of Euclid. There's Player Clubs and Star Pass over here. There's Palo Verde Road there. And then on the map, there's a list of the routes themselves. So the list of routes right here is 18th from Park to Mountain, Cherry from 20th, which is Warehouse Street, to 22nd, Warehouse from Mountain to 20th, Cherrybelle from 24th to Silver Lake from Campbell to Cherrybelle, Players Club from Anklin to Star Pass from Tohono Ridge to Lost Star, 18th from Euclid to Park, Euclid from 16th to 18th, 29th from Craycroft to Wilmot, Flowing Wells, Miracle to Grant, Glen, Flowing Wells to Oracle, Maine, Drachman to Speedway, Palo Verde, Valencia to Corona, and Sarnoff, Broadway to Pantano. And I'll just flip over to the other side of the map here so you can see them in red on the map. So the way we depicted them, you can see there's the 29th, there's the Sarnoff. So that sort of gives you an overview of the majors. Can you see the other map now? These are the local streets. So there's Ward 3, there's Ward 1, Ward 6, Ward 2. You can see Ward 2 is a little bit bigger of a neighborhood. Ward 5, Ward 5 corner there. So this basically gives the funding allotment, which was divided as close as possible to evenly across the wards based upon the size of the area. So here you can see a blow up a little bit of the 2 Ward 1 neighborhoods. There's 2 of Ward 1. There's the Ward 2 neighborhood. You can see how much bigger it is than the Ward 1s. That's why there's only 1. And we've got Ward 3, where there's also 2 neighborhoods. Ward 4. Oh, I guess Ward 4 has this and this, so that has 2. Ward 6 only has the 1, but you can see it's a bigger one. And Ward 5 has 3 because they're all very tiny. Okay, so we'll go ahead and email those. So I'm gonna stop sharing screen. Now if I can.
Robin, Letty is actually sending that email right now.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen and let her send those out real quick so that you'll have them at your fingertips.
I think that Jeffrey had mentioned that he could put that in the chat because he had it up. Did I see that, Jeffrey?
Yes, I could drop that into chat, and it may be a little bit easier for folks. Give me a moment.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry that it was hard. It would have been hard for me to do that at the same time I was walking through it with you guys. And we can walk back through it again real quick once you've got it in front of you, or just go with questions.
Okay. Are you ready to go with questions, Robin?
Well, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. So if the VOC, if you all want to approve these locations, we can approve up to 24 million tonight. And if the revenues come in more, because right now it's just projection, right? If they come in more, we'll come back to you and we'll say here are some more, right? If the revenues come up short, our intention right now would be to look for other separate funding sources to complete the list. So that's all I kind of wanted to mention, and then we can go either back through the maps or you guys can ask questions, whatever your pleasure is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will, let's go through some questions, and I've got Lisa as I said Lisa, I meant Liz, sorry about that. Liz, you're first, and then we'll follow that with Ian.
I can defer to Ian go first. He had his hand up first, so Ian, go for it, and I'll follow. Thank you.
Okay. I just had a quick question. I noticed, and this may actually apply to more than one of the residential paving blocks, but I noticed that the one in Ward 2, well, I guess the question is more simple than that. So if any of these residential paving blocks include stretches of bicycle boulevards, in the past there's been sort of an informal practice. It seems like with DTM that those were getting enhanced treatments instead of just the standard chip seal or the overlay, or they were actually getting mill and overlays, say. And I was just curious if that was.
Yeah, it's not the same. I mean, because in 101, the treatment for these failed streets was all to have them milled and overlaid or reconstructed. So all of the streets in the neighborhood are the better paving.
Well, actually, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that like the crown jewel of the Bike Boulevard network is really Campbell to Tucson in the Sam Hughes neighborhood on 3rd Street. And that was mill and overlay, and the rest of the neighborhood was chip sealed. And it's very clear that that was the case. And anyway, all I'm saying is that going to be part of the plan, or is it just going to be chip sealed all the way through the entire block? And the fact that it's a bike boulevard doesn't mean anything special.
Well, I haven't been here for a while, so maybe you guys changed how you were doing events for the neighborhoods, but.
So, Robin, I can speak to that. So under 409, if you remember, Ian, the treatment was basically a resurfacing, like an overlay. We did slurries, we did a microsurface, then we did the micro mill with a double chip. When we went to 101, okay, when that was approved by voters, the decision was made to go to total reconstructs. In 409, it was like you said, it was, a lesser treatment except for the bike boulevards. So when we got to 101, everything was a reconstruct. So therefore, whether it was a bike boulevard or a part of a neighborhood street in that polygon, they were all reconstructed.
Right.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm belaboring it, but so you're saying that all of these treatment blocks that we're looking at tonight, these are all like the heavier duty treatment? They're not just chip seals? Because I know, like,
Yes.
right near Miles School, that looks like a slurry. Is that
Miles-
different?
Miles School is not a 101 project.
Okay, my misunderstanding. Okay, great. That's great to hear.
That's part of the $14 million mayor and council approved this year's fiscal year budget, when they allocated $14 million to each ward, so $2 million per ward, including the mayor's recommendation. And so that was basically done by VSS, and that was a microsurface overlay.
Okay, thank you very much for clearing that up for me. I appreciate it.
Okay, to you, Liz, then.
Thank you. So I'm here to actually advocate for Barrio Sovaco, that be the priority for Ward 1. And we've had a lot of feedback over the last couple of years, from campaigning to door knocking, that they often get left behind, and that our older barrios, they do lack the infrastructure needed. And so I'm here to advocate that Barrio Sovaco be the priority for the surplus funding, and not Silvercroft. And I think that's what neighborhood?
So
The second one highlighted in there, that it just become the focus. And that's also in addition to like talking with neighbors, but that's also in conjunction with the feedback and conversations with the vice mayor and Ward 1 staff. So I wanted to bring that forward. And I also, I'm newer to the group, right? And so my understanding is that in Prop 409, that a significant, like, greater amount of funds was allocated and spent in Ward 6. And then another Ward 1 representative that was on the commission really tried to fight for equity and how we distribute these 101 funds. And so I'm curious to know, with the surplus funds, now we're going to just equal across or close to enough. So I'm just curious, why we're not following that same spirit and intent.
So at the point that we were done with all of the original neighborhoods, that number was equal then across the wards. So as far as the amount spent in individual wards, by the time we were done with this group, right before we add the next layer, the wards that didn't get as many dollars got more dollars in the rest of 101. And so at this point in time, we've got it sort of equally spread money-wise across the wards. And that's why for this extra, we made it equality across the wards, because anything we do now If we more heavily weight it towards Ward 1, then Ward 1 will have received more funds than anyone else. If we heavily weighted towards Ward 2, then Ward 2 would receive more than, and it goes across boards, right? So at this point, we have achieved close, right? Because you're never going to get it down to the dollar because it's construction, but we've got pretty much an equal number of dollars within each ward spent between 409 and 101. And so that's why these were spread equally among the wards. The other question about the one you wanted to add, I'll have to ask James from our pavement folks to give it maybe a quick look. He probably can't do that really fast, and see if the neighborhood you mentioned has fewer or more streets than the ones in this one, because like I mentioned, as I was walking through them, a couple of the wards only have one neighborhood because those neighborhoods have a lot of streets. And it's not even just a question of how many streets there are, it's how wide they are.
Yeah, and I know it takes us away from like that polygon, that shape, but and I drove it. I've been riding the bike in Sovaco, and so it's like Navajo, Dragoon, Mojave. Like there's some really bad streets, and I think on the map they're equally, at least within the same range as Silvercroft, but in worse condition, it seems.
I'd be willing to bet you that 85% of our roads are in the same condition in the neighborhoods. So yes, I completely understand that they are at least as bad. We tried to get the worst ones that would fit within the dollar amount, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm feeling like maybe that neighborhood has too many square feet, and that would kick Ward 1 then to be the one that got all the money.
Mm-hmm. But we in this plan, is it possible to select streets in a smaller, mile range, or are you saying like that's just not possible? We want to stick to.
If you do a square mile, you're going to take all the money that we have available.
Okay. Well, I do gotta say I don't feel comfortable voting tonight on what's presented, and
no pressure at all. I mean, yeah, we wanted to try to present what was there, and if this group wants to go away from the equality among the different wards and just pour all money into one or the other, that's a discussion that we can have here today. If you want to change how you're assessing these and go more towards one ward than another, that's a way to look at it. If you want to just vote on the major streets up to the certain amount that we had, if that works, and just bring back a different list later for local streets, then we can create something else. And I would ask if anybody else has any other areas that they're wanting to for us to consider instead of these. Because I will tell you, if we go to one of those very, very large neighborhoods, then this group is going to have to discuss which wards don't get any money for their local streets.
Okay. With that said, I think Liz has got an open question that the committee's going to have to talk about and decide. I have other questions. I have Bruce and Jesse Lugo, and I think Jesse was first. So go ahead, Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah, I would like to get a spreadsheet report on the 14 million that Mayor and Council transfer from the general fund for streets, and provided for each ward and the mayor's office. How will their funds utilized for the streets? We can get a report of that.
Okay, so they're not done yet. For instance, Ward 5 has not selected their final ones, and the mayor's office has not yet selected the final locations. So we have not very many dollars yet for Ward 5 and none yet for the mayor's office, but the rest of them either have selected and some of them done, or they're going to be started here pretty soon.
Yeah, and the follow-up question is how did every council member of the mayor's office work with TDOT to select whichever streets on it? Because as I understand, no commissioner was contacted for any input.
You are correct. The ward office has selected them directly.
Thank you.
Okay, Bruce Burke. Are you there, Bruce?
Hi, Bruce, you're muted.
You're muted, Bruce.
It's not an unusual situation for me. So I think I'm on now. I just wanted to make an observation. I and others on this commission have been here since the beginning, so to speak, of these efforts. And we lived through that history that was recited on how to allocate the resources, scarce as they are, in an equitable fashion. And that's a lesson I think we learned in transition when we discovered Ward 6 under the worst first scenario received the majority of the funds, and the adjustment as was commented on was made to rectify that. So I'm very cautious about trying to deviate from that result in going forward. I think it presents complications, and the issues that it presents are not easy to resolve. So we need an objective set of formula or protocol to make these decisions equitably, and I think we've reached a pretty good balance at this point. I do have a question about the 60-40 split. Is that something we're basically bound to?
So we are bound to the original voter approved legislation. There's a provision in there that would allow a deviation, but it would require that we go back out to the voters in order to deviate.
That answers that question, because we're not going to do that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a request to speak from a James Castaneda. I assume that's an audience member and not a member of the commission. It's not a name I recognize.
James is one of our pavement folks, and he's maybe going to be able to answer the question I posed about the neighborhood that Liz requested information on.
Okay, with that cleared up, we'll go to James.
Good evening. Thank you for your questions. I just wanted to echo what Robin mentioned. We did look at worst first, and really truly the limiting factor was the budget. I do briefly will say that we looked at Barrio Sobaco, which I believe is adjacent to Silvercroft. I think it's also known as El Rio neighborhood. And as Robin mentioned, the limiting factor was the density of streets and the square yardage total. So it's something that could be looked at in a smaller area, I suppose, but we did take that into account, and Silvercroft for that ward had the best fit given the constraints, as Robin mentioned. Thank you.
Now I'm muted. Thank you, James. With that said, I would like a little bit of feeling from the committee about how you would like to proceed. I'm going to give you an idea of what I want to do, and in that there's a question for Robin. My concept here is that we take a little bit of time and look at these maps and come up with where we're at. We're going to need to have a meeting in April for our updates. Is time, what's the criticalness time on getting this approved, Robin?
And the sooner we know, the sooner we can get started on planning, because sometimes what happens is we'll find that there's a neighborhood that needed some, or had planned some utility, and we have to move to a different one first. And so it helps us if we've got the list going to put them in priority and start to get them designed. But I guess I'll ask Mike and Jeffrey. I don't know that there's a huge hurry, because this 101 expires in, I want to say, is it June? And so we won't know until maybe July or whatever, what the exact number is. So I don't know. That's a huge stretch. Michael, do you have a better sense than that?
No, but I do know that as the next agenda item, which we're going to speak a little to, is Prop 411. So, there's going to have to be a decision-making process from a committee that's going to be put together by mayor and council on what we, move forward with arterials and so forth for that program. But it's, what the board wants to do. And Jeffrey, if you want to step in as well and provide some feedback on a timeline, if it needs to be sooner rather than later.
I would concur and echo what you've shared, Mike, and Robin, what you've shared. Yes, the current tax will continue to accrue revenues through June 30th. That's when we'll have a better feel for exactly where we ended, and it'll help inform what the actual surplus is. I would also reiterate what Mike had said, in that the sooner we're able to come to that decision, the better. There's a little bit of a process there, right? So this body will put forth a recommendation. That recommendation will then be agendized and go before mayor and council for final approval. So certainly appreciate not wanting to make a decision in a vacuum, but just want to let you guys know, once we get your recommendation, there is a second step that would happen thereafter.
Okay, I appreciate that. And let me say this about the time, the collection time. My understanding is, of course, that people will file their sales tax in July, and it'll be like mid-August or so when you actually have the numbers, the final numbers. Am I correct on that, James?
Yes, there is a lag. Yes, that is accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Just as an old CPA. With that said, do I hear any comments from the committee regarding your feelings about the timing and what you want to do to come to a conclusion? I will say that from a timing standpoint, we can do a couple things. We can schedule another meeting in about a month, or we can put this on the agenda for our normal April meeting. Or we can make a decision tonight. Does anybody have comments on that? I'll be very honest, I'm against making a decision tonight.
Mr. Chairman, this is Al.
Tonight, sorry.
Yes, Al.
Yeah, I would agree that I think we need to have another special meeting maybe next month, maybe just on the topic of do we agree or disagree on these streets, because I can't see the graphs that they've been put up, and I'm not that acquainted with getting to the computer to get to my email and losing you all. And so I'd like to have some time to at least look at that and say, is this worth, what we want to do with the extra funds? So I'd rather put the vote off tonight.
Okay.
I'm in favor of waiting and giving it some thought.
Who's speaking? I'm sorry.
That was Bruce.
That was Bruce. You'd like to wait too, Bruce?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
Ian, you're breaking up.
Okay. I was just going to say, seeing as we didn't receive the maps until just now, it seems like waiting is probably not a terrible idea. I just wanted to be clear. So based on the projection tonight of what we think the surplus is, the maps that you provided tonight would use up all that funding, and it may be more, maybe less, we'll know in August. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Cynthia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, one, I would have to agree with everybody on not making a decision tonight. And two, I think that if we waited until the April meeting, that would give us a little more time than having to blow right into next month for a meeting. Because this one was a special meeting, and yet, we've got some decisions that we've got to really think about before we can, actually vote on them. And I would say hold off until the April meeting, which is a regular meeting.
Okay. Mike, just for your comments about the timing, is the April meeting too late for you guys?
Well, I'll defer that, the answer to that to Jeffrey.
Okay.
I don't think that if this body is not comfortable at this point, I think that the preference would be for the group to come to a comfort level. So I would say no, it's not too
Okay.
late.
Okay, can we now kind of wrap this up for tonight with this then? Can we have the maps or the links to the maps emailed out to everybody in the next couple of days?
So they were,
And then we can start looking at the maps, and if we have questions, as we look at the maps, can you coordinate getting those questions answered, Mike?
absolutely, absolutely. So
Okay.
Ticia did forward the maps during the meeting. And if I could just step back and inform you all, Ian, and you had brought this up, and let the commission know that we were working on these maps. We've been working on them, Todd Kessler and his group, the pavement management group. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we were able to get with mayor and council first before we sent them to the commission, because we want to let mayor and council be aware of what we're doing before we take it to the commission. And so that's why we didn't get those to you in a timely manner. So my apologies for that, but we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence with our mayor and council.
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear from my standpoint, I think it's going to be comfort level for the entire commission to have time to sit down and actually look at those maps when we're not trying to speak, etc., and think about them. So I'm very comfortable. We'll put it on the agenda for the April meeting, unless somebody makes a motion to the contrary.
Great, thanks, Dale.
I'm hearing nothing. So I think we're done with this item. Give everybody another 5 seconds if they want to say anything. If not.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make the observation that we have to be careful as we adjourn, that we don't start having discussions among commission members offline on these decisions, because we have to worry about the open meeting law.
Yeah, I will restate that. You cannot have offline discussions. You can't get in and discuss the items as you would on the commission. We can't hold a meeting. You can't get a telephone call or et cetera where a quorum discusses these. That would be a violation of the open meeting law. So what we want people to do is study the maps, get their comments together, and then come prepared in the April meeting to give us your comments. Does that work for everybody? Very good. Getting a thumbs up from Bruce Burke, who has lots of experience with this. With that said, let's move on to item 7 on the agenda. This is proposition 411, or as most of you know, the extension of the sales tax. And our long, I'm going to editorialize here for just a second, Robin. As somebody who's been fighting this issue of trying to get more money for residential streets and street pay or maintenance for about 30 years, this is the first time I have seen the mayor and council try to do a comprehensive idea to hit all the streets. So with that editorial comment from the chair, we give the floor to Robin, and she'll explain what's involved, I guess, and make whatever comments she wants. Thank you, Robin.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So one of the things I wanted to mention when you were talking about the last item is just that those of you who are appointed by ward offices especially, I don't think there's anything that prohibits you from talking to your ward office about what their considerations are, because they have the maps as well. And I think, that's an important part of the step, which was part of the reason we wanted to make sure that mayor and council saw these maps too. So just wanted to add that to last item. And so next was item 7, proposition 411, the 411, right? Isn't that the information? So I think you guys all know that on February 1st, Mayor and Council voted to approve the ballot language to extend the existing sales tax that this commission sits looking at for 10 years. And it'll go out to the voters on May 17th, 2022. The voters are going to be asked to use that half-cent sales tax extension to resurface and improve local neighborhood streets with 80% of the generated revenue and fund safety improvements such as bike ped facilities, sidewalks, traffic signal technology, street lighting with 20% of the generated revenue. So the 20% will sort of be dictated by the Move Tucson, and the 80% is all the local streets that we will touch, every single local street. And so we're calling them from the DTM side local streets. In this document, they're being called neighborhood streets because we had this discussion in this body a while back where some of our neighborhood streets are not just residential. They also have some commercial enterprises. So this will include all of those local streets, not just residential blocks. Just because I know this group understands the difference between those. The sales tax extension, we anticipate to generate $745 million over 10 years. And the half-cent sales tax would generate sufficient funding to touch every publicly owned local street in the city of Tucson with a stopgap or a preservation pavement treatment. And some of the streets with stopgap treatments would receive full reconstruction by the end of the 10 years. So the treatments will be more similar to the 409 treatments until the end. And that's how we get them all touched. And that's kind of it. Any questions?
Okay, committee, do we have questions about it? Yes, Josie.
Yeah, one thing that I saw on the Daily Star that based on 411, that there is no opportunity to change the language on Prop 411. And the reason why I'm making this statement is because there's no public input. In fact, most people understand that I just do not support virtual meetings. We have to move to public meetings where you have more of an impact. But one of the things I was just elated that some of the commissioners back in 2016, I wrote mayor and council an email stating that general fund dollars should be used for neighborhood streets. In fact, I had to read that comment a couple of times and say, wow, it took 5 years finding mayor and council, are going to do something about it. So with that said, I was hoping that maybe you since there is no public input or the language can be changed, I was hoping to separate the funding on two separate propositions versus combining both of them at the same time. Yeah, and a comment.
Are you good? Is Jeffrey or Robin, you want to comment on that, or you want to?
I mean, that's 80% for all the local streets, and then 20% will have at least some level of input because the idea is to have some sort of a commission. Perhaps it would be like the Complete Streets Coordinating Council that already sits, looking at prioritization of those various areas. Oh, I've got a lot of echo there.
Yeah. Okay. I would want to comment on something Robin said, but Robin talked about or didn't talk about that I think is in the project, and I'd like Robin to follow up on this if I'm getting this wrong, or even if I'm not getting it wrong. The bottom line is there are also two other corollary things that were part of the mayor and council's adoption of the 411 proposition, and that is there is a tax, and I forgot the exact terms, truth in taxation statement that there will be approximately $90 million over 5 years set aside out of the general operating fund for support of police and fire capital improvements. And probably of more interest to this group, to transportation people, is that the city is close to paying off the HERF revenue bonds from, and I think they're the 2001 bonds, but I wouldn't swear to that. And when those bonds are paid off, that they are going to dedicate those HERF revenue funds of about $11 million a year to improving collector streets. And I don't know where you're at with that. I also see here that Timothy Tamir would like to make a comment, and I have somebody else. Timothy, do you want to make a comment about what I'm saying or something else?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Tim Tamir, Assistant City Manager, and I wanted to weigh in just because I wasn't sure if Robin had the full details on those two items that you just detailed. So I'm here to reflect back to you that what you stated is correct. In the truth and taxation associated with the Prop 411 ballot measure, there will be a commitment out of general fund dollars toward public safety. That's the $90 million over 10 years that you mentioned. And there's an additional commitment of general fund plus the HERF funds that are being relieved by paying off that past debt, to the tune of about $15 million per year. The HERF is about $11 million, and the general fund commitment is another $4 million, $15 million total. And the intent for that is to address the collector streets. So out of the 80% of the 411 tax, if adopted, that, as noted, goes toward the neighborhood streets. But we are allocating an additional general fund and HERF investment in the collector streets. And then our thinking is that we would address arterial streets or additional needs through an RTA Next type approach. Thank you for letting me weigh in.
Dale,
Once I get unmuted, I will thank you, Timothy, for weighing in. Thank you. Do we have other questions? I see Ian has a question.
Yeah, I just had one quick question. Of special interest to this committee, perhaps commission, might be what is written into the language as it stands, because my understanding is it can't be changed at this point, regarding the oversight of the 411. Is it that this commission will continue, or will the Complete Streets Coordinating Council be involved with the 20% that's not specifically pavement? Do we have any decisions or final, where does that stand is I guess what I'm asking.
So just generically, as far as the neighborhoods, it would be an independent oversight commission. And it would probably be similar, if not identical, to this one. And the idea for the 20% was for something like or identical to the Complete Streets Coordinating Council for that. There would be an oversight of each segment of.
But the final details have not been determined. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is true.
Okay, thank you very much.
Final details not yet determined.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Al.
Yes, go ahead, Al.
Robin, I got a question that is probably not on the propositions, but on the 18-cent federal gas tax that Senator Kelly is considering trying to suspend for next year, how will that affect the propositions and also any repairs that Department of Transportation? Will that have a major effect on the city?
So that's federal gas tax. And generally speaking, the way we get as a city federal gas tax money is through the PAG. So it comes to PAG. and then PAG distributes it throughout the entire county. And by PAG, I mean us, right? Because each individual jurisdiction has a vote on the PAG board. And so the possibility, of course, exists that if there was less money in the highway trust fund, which that gas tax funds, that we would get less money. But at this point in time, it seems like the infrastructure bill has guaranteed a certain number of dollars to each individual area. And so then it sort of becomes the federal government's issue to fully fund that bill or that act, that law. And while it would certainly impact the federal government's bottom line because they would no longer have that gas tax to fund the highway trust fund, I think because the bipartisan infrastructure law has been passed, I think they are now bound to fund it. So fingers crossed they wouldn't rescind it because of this sort of thing. I think we're not going to see a huge problem with that locally.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions we have on Prop 411? We did, or somebody alluded to the fact that that they would probably be looking for arterial street money from the RTA next, just as a previous Citizens Advisory Committee member, and I assume I'll probably be on the reconstituted, but I don't know that when they get through with the changes. But there has been discussion at the RTA of funding neighborhood streets. Where it stands is of the cities have all requested money from the RTA with the exception of Marana. And Marana is opposed to funding maintenance. And we'll see how that works out. That's going to have to go forward with the RTA Citizens Committee as what's happening there. And that's not even really an agendized item, so we probably ought to move on. Do we have any other questions on 411 before I move on? Seeing none, we'll move on to the citizens' request log. And Mike.
Great. Thanks, Dale. So Leticia sent the citizen request log to you this morning. I hope you all received it. There were 26 additions to the log since our last meeting, and broken down by ward. Ward 1 had 5 requests. Ward 2 had 4 requests. Ward 3 had 1 request. Ward 4 had 11. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 had 11. Ward 5 had 3, and Ward 6 had 2 requests for a grand total, again, 26 additions to the CRL. Any questions?
I'm seeing none, hearing none. I have no questions. So anybody else? Okay. Future meeting date and agenda. First, does anybody have any agenda items they want to see on future meetings other than what we've already talked about on the excess revenue funding? I'm not hearing anything. Did somebody put something in here? Don't see it.
Jesse has his hand up, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Jesse, you got something?
Yeah, future agenda, again, I just want to see if we can get a report on how mayor and council members selected the streets based on the $14 million that was transferred from the general fund. So if we can get a list, by then, that would be appreciated.
Okay. And I'm going to say this, I mean, that's a done fact. They decided to do that on their own. but I would like to see if the department would provide us with a list. I would like to know what was adopted. I know Robin has already stated that there are one council office and the mayor's office that have not made their complete decisions yet. So I assume we'll wait for that until those decisions are made. Do you understand that, Jesse?
So if I can,
I got it.
so if I can clarify, if the mayor's office and Ward 5 has not made their selections, then that is not an agenda item for the next meeting, or if they haven't made their decision by April, which I hope they would because it's getting close to the end of the fiscal year, but
yeah. Well, let's take the ambiguity out of it. Let's get a report on what's been selected and what hasn't been selected, and we'll report that as an agenda item. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, we'll make sure to get that on the agenda.
Okay.
We'll give you
Thank
what we have.
Yep. Very good. The future meeting date. We normally meet in the first month of the next quarter, because then the quarterly reports are in and things have had a chance to do that. I assume we're looking at probably like the 18th or the 25th of April. Is that what, Mike, you would be thinking, or?
Whatever is the pleasure of the commission.
Okay. Do we have comments from commission members?
Yeah, this is Cindy. The 18th is tax day. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. You know, as a retired accountant, I'm trying to totally forget it's tax day.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's also the 18th is just after Easter too.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we shoot for the 25th? And all of the numbers should be in then by then, shouldn't they, Mike, as far as getting the reports for the first quarter activity and status?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So we're looking at Monday, April 25th?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question, Al?
Yes, Al.
I know that one of the discussions that part of this extra money and how we would like to vote on it or use it has to go to mayor and council, and they should have something before the end of the fiscal year. I'm making that assumption. So would the 25th give the staff enough time after we come to a decision, or is it something maybe we should go to the 11th? And give them an extra 2 weeks. I don't know.
Any comments from staff?
I can weigh in on that one. I think that either date would be fine and would allow the city enough room and time to maneuver as it would need.
Okay. The chair recommends the 25th. Is there any other comments, or shall we just go with the 25th?
This is Al. I'll go with the 25th.
Okay.
This is Cindy, 25th.
Okay. Any other committee members got comments that they have a problem with the 25th?
No, this is Bruce. That'd be my choice. I'll be out of town on the May date.
Okay. 25th of April it is, unless I hear some other objection.
And if I can ask just another question,
Sure.
Dale, in reference to the agenda. So we'll put on the agenda the list that mayor council have selected for the 14 million. And then are we going to have a continued discussion on the Prop 101 additional funding capacity? Is that correct? That's
correct. And we also will have our usual quarterly reports on the status of funds collected and progress on projects.
Okay, so we'll do the funding update with Jeffrey, and then we'll bring back Austin and Sarah to give an update on the locals and the arterial collector packages.
Okay, very good. Any other requests?
Just a quick, this is Liz. Do you
Yeah.
all think that we need to have Prop 411 back on the agenda, even if briefly, since, does it go to vote in May or is it June? I'm sorry, I don't remember the timeline.
My understanding is May 17th. Is that correct?
Okay, so there might not be any more information we need to know that we received today. You think we're good, Robin?
Yeah, you know, I would ask staff if they do make a decision about whether it's this committee going forward or somebody else, that staff would report that. But I don't know that that decision will be made. So you got to comment on that, Mike?
How about if I go ahead and agendize Prop 411 update? And if there is anything to update, which there most likely will be, that we'll go ahead and touch base on that. And if not, then Robin can report on that as well. So,
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and agendize that item.
Okay, thank you. That makes good sense. Any other comments? With that, I think we move on to item 10, which is adjournment. Anybody have any reason not to adjourn? Can I get a motion, I guess?
I'll move to adjourn.
Bruce has moved.
I
We got a
second
second? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any comments? Okay, we are gone until the 25th of April. We'll see you then. Looking forward to it.
We're going to go back to 5:30, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna go back to 5:30 unless there's somebody raises a question right now. I'm not hearing anything, so we're going back to 5:30. So
5:30. Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Be safe.
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Mike,